Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Let's hop in here. Let's see, where's my mouse? There it is. Today is Wednesday, October 26th, and yeah, we only have a couple of days left of the regulation battles, which we also only have a couple days left before the end of the month. I tried to play one game yesterday, and honestly, I just ended up surrendering. Like, I just had no interest in it at all. It is just ridiculous how boring playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Can be if you're not doing something else, or how boring any of these games can become if you're not doing something else, for me. Like, I certainly am just not all on board with playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Non-stop. And inherently, I think some of that definitely comes down to the idea of playing a game like this uh, against faceless, silent, anonymous competitors versus playing Yu-Gi-Oh! At a comic book shop, I guess pre-pandemic times when comic book shops even were slightly in existence. I suspect that there will be very few comic book shops that even exist in the next years, as they go forward. Uh, but yeah, playing with people you know, friends, weekly, face to face, I think would just be a better experience. So we're still trying to get to Platinum 5 to get the Blue Protector. Like, theoretically, yes, you'd want to get the Platinum 1 and get this title, and Diamond 1 to get this frame and this title, but plus all the gems. But realistically, I think I am just teetering back and forth between going up and going down. For the accountability section, yesterday I finally put the grommets, which are little plastic like cable guides, in the Lego table that I was building out of 6 bookcases that can be rotated 90 degrees. This is a project that I mostly finished, I think, around January or so last year. I just haven't been really focused on finishing that project. There's just kind of was no reason for me to focus on that, and I got distracted on other projects. It was also a physical project, and every time I did something physical, particularly when I was finishing up that project, I was hurting my back. So, but yeah, I finally finished it. Got all the LEDs wired up. I'm crossing my fingers I wired everything correctly. It's real easy, to say the least, to have wire that is all white accidentally connect a positive to a negative, or even just have loose wires touching each other, which happened for a brief second. Now the good news on that is it is going through, it's 120 volts going through like a transformer, bringing it down to 5 volts, but still the wattage on that transformer is high enough that it could certainly have shorted out LEDs or caused overheating fire, burning out the wire. I imagine the wire, it's so incredibly thin, the wire itself might burn out before even the diodes burned out. But the odd way in which you're injecting power into LED strips at different points does make this odd kind of like parallel interface, in which you might at the very beginning of the line inject voltage, and then the voltage drops considerably because of the small wires and the diodes, in just 1 meter of LEDs. And this entire setup is probably about 4 meters, if not 5 meters, of LEDs. And then you inject some juice at the beginning, and let's say it's 12 volts, it's probably close to 10 volts after a meter. Then you inject some more power that can then go either direction to bolster that back up to 12 volts, because it is the same source. Now, if you had two power sources giving a plus 12 at the beginning and a plus 12 at a meter down the length, then yes, you could go up to above 12 volts. But because it's all the one transformer and you're just making a shorter path with a direct wire connection versus a meter of LEDs that are using the power and dropping the voltage, you're fairly safe there as long as you get the positives on the positives and the negatives on the negatives. And so for my setup, I had to set one up at the beginning, and I was able to do probably 2 meters really before the voltage started to drop. Then I did one at the middle, so 2.5 meters at that point, and then one at the end. So 3 different paths, hopefully, again, all the positives at the positives, all the negatives at the negatives, 3 different paths, all bolstering in each direction to 12 volts. And diodes on LEDs are diodes, so they should resist power going backwards, but there's something in the circuitry of the LEDs I was working with where that doesn't seem like that's really the case. Because if they were pure diodes and there was no other circuit that allowed the power to move through it, then the 12 volts drop at the beginning would just be 10 volts, and then it would add or bolster the amount of current, but not really the voltage in the middle. But the last LED on that first strip before you got that second shot of power, that second path of power, should not be able to do anything. Like it should be pretty dim. But I imagine because what's going on is that there is a 3-wire setup with then an encouragement as to the way they've soldered the connectors and the wires to it, that you add power to wire 1 and wire 3. I imagine the circuitry actually only diodes in wire 2, the middle wire, but probably not even at that. Probably inside the circuitry there's a path where the electricity goes in and out but also drops down. We have JJ the Nico, or Nico being Japanese for cat, say hello Duel viewers. No, I don't. It's not now, not yet. It's not worth it in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel to Duel viewers. It's a huge hassle. I can say friend me on Steam, I guess, is a good response to that. At some point in the future, if Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel gets to a point where we can challenge people based on our friends on Steam, that'd be great. Otherwise, even if that doesn't happen, it sets up a connection of some sort, because like right now it's kind of difficult. Well, let's see. Can I click on... See, like I can't even click on myself or right click to pull up the information as far as the friend code in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel. So, even suggesting that you friend me in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel is just not something that they've set up for. We're right now in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, and just like the prime example of the problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and the idea of having friendly battles is we're at the end of the month. I desperately want to get up one more level in this regulation battle. I desperately would need to get up to Platinum 5 in ranked. There's just not enough hours in the day to play games. Speaking of not having enough hours in the day to play games, I'm still stupidly playing Marvel Snap. The Giant Bombcast talked about it quite a bit, and they really loved the game. I don't really like Marvel Snap at all. And yet, I am just addicted to wasting time playing it, and I honestly don't know if it really isn't just an addiction to wasting time or just not doing anything else. Anyways, to wrap up what I was saying, yeah, I got the LEDs to my Lego table set. It is a massive table. It needs to be emphasized. Is probably 10 feet long, and I would say maybe 6 feet wide as far as a table. It also is kind of uniquely not as high as you would think, although it is about table height. If it were a regular like dining table and didn't have shelves under it, it would be probably 6 inches too short to comfortably put a chair with arms under it. But other than that, it's actually kind of just the perfect height. And as a project, it was not a bad project. I'm definitely messed up things, and I think adding the LEDs was frankly a nightmare, and the cheapness of the project is definitely reflected in the cheapness of the Walmart bookshelves I used, because there's no wood really in any of it. It is all cardboard and particle board, but it's just holding Legos to display Legos, so it works there. I think what I would have done differently, though, is getting pre-made under-the-counter LED shelves instead of trying to do a long strip of LEDs, and drilling fairly large holes into cardboard. Alright, see, and now I've been demoted. And then at a certain point, that's probably a good argument just to say that now is the time to rage quit. And yeah, there's definitely an argument that if you can guarantee you would have gotten better furniture, stronger furniture, you probably would have wanted to pay a little bit more instead of buying what were like $60 bookshelves, $60 to $100 bookshelves, really, really cheap for furniture. I half expect what I would want to do is, if I was going to try and keep it the same, is have a woodworker just slowly replace parts of the furniture with solid wood, which would significantly increase the weight on it. But like, if you were a woodworker, you would have built one shelf, realized it was completely junk, used the one shelf as your test material to then use them as templates to cut out your own wood. But yeah, I'm glad to be done with that project, and I think that pretty much says I'm done with any projects that I started last year, and I'm wrapping up on my guest Wi-Fi Raspberry Pi project too. It turns out, as I'm teaching myself how systemd timer files work in Raspbian, the Debian Linux version, that if you have a service already started by the timer, or the service goes on forever, the timer will not restart it or run another instance of it. So while I'm trying to program it to run a script to do daily Borg backups and monthly Borg backups, I have to effectively wait an hour if I change it to an hourly timer, or a day if I leave it as a daily timer, just to make sure things work. I think I finally have gotten it to work, thank goodness, but working on something for just a couple of minutes and then having to wait a whole day is not an efficient way to do programming. But yeah, I'm wrapping up that project. I've wrapped up the Lego project. I need to work on my irrigation system. I think I am gonna have to be a lot more cautious around digging in my yard to install the irrigation system, because it does occur to me now that I think the electricity on one side of my house is also buried, and so I don't think that there really is too many places where I can even begin to dig where I'm not significantly unsafe, as far as there might be something buried there. So yeah, I'll just do the thing I should have done and should do anyways, which is just call the American call before you dig number, the United States, whatever it is, 811, 311, whatever that number is, and have somebody come and mark places. But before I even do that, I still need to test out the length run and the number of splits. Much like the electricity issue, water works almost exactly the same, in that as I try to put more sprinkler heads and split it, the pressure / voltage drops. And I was going to test all of that on the surface before I buried anything anyways. The problem with that project is, I'm getting right close to winter, where that's not going to work anyways. And so I'm probably just gonna turn off the irrigation system till I get outside of winter anyways. So yeah, that's a project that might take a long time, but I will inevitably be forced to work on it as soon as another one of my pipes bursts, and winter has a high chance of a pipe bursting. As for actual video games, since this is supposed to be an accountability section as far as what did I do to make content for my YouTube channel, the answer to that is very little. I didn't get around to playing Darkest Dungeon, which I don't think that's quite to the point where I'm just kind of not into Darkest Dungeon. At a certain level, I am not that interested in the Darkest Dungeon so far, but I do think there's room to make it all the way to the end. One of the things that was interesting for me to realize is that there's probably a significant number of people, about 60% of people, who only played Darkest Dungeon in its early launch window and never went back because of the added characters and DLC. And I'm getting 60% from the fact that only 60% of players have ever recruited a Flagellant character, which is a DLC character. So either I got really lucky to get that character random amongst the random characters you can take as team members, or that just highlights that enthusiasm for the game was not regained for people who had already played the game multiple times in its early access period. If anything, I think Darkest Dungeon is probably an example of where early access can make a game feel like it's really, really successful, and at a certain level, yes, it does make that early access experience really successful, but doesn't benefit from the long tail fandom that a finished product released on day one can generate. Did I do anything else? I watched some episodes on Netflix of this. They say it's PG. Honestly, though, I think it should be PG-13. Horror kids show called Mr. Midnight, with these kids in Indonesia taking on Asian monsters, which is an interesting spin. And it's not a subtitled, and it doesn't even seem like it's dubbed, so it is like people in Indonesia speaking mostly English. Occasionally you'll get a couple of phrases of whatever Indonesian language they are speaking, whatever that would be called, I don't even know. But yeah, as far as just like a Nickelodeon type spooky show, it seems cool. And the fact that I actually remember watching it is a huge step up compared to what has been happening in the previous couple days, in which I've been watching stuff on streaming services and then completely forgetting even the name of what I was watching because it's just in one ear and out the other. And certainly it doesn't go unnoticed by me that I've been just taking a lot of breaks lately. My back has been hurting a little bit, and maybe I'm just being paranoid for a good reason to not overexert myself, but yeah, it definitely has been fairly laid back as far as what I've been doing. I probably need to get rid of the accountability section at a certain point, or at least rethink what I talk about in the accountability section, because I am stupidly starting these streams and then I am just rambling about things that I don't know if most people would even understand or care or be able to relate to. Yeah, talking about programming Raspbian Linux with a systemd service timer is something that's fairly exclusionary to anybody who doesn't know programming, doesn't know Linux, doesn't know systemd. That's most of the people in the world. YouTube has been talking about rolling out handles. Well, apparently, I would guess you don't get a handle until you have access to the community panels, or when they roll out services, they do it based on who they like and who has the most amount of subscribers. So much so that literally just a couple days ago, like yesterday or the day before, they gave me the ability to make community posts. So I did it, tested it out, and I'm fairly sure nobody saw it and nobody responded to it. I said, do you like YouTube Shorts? I got some AI generated pictures of shorts, AI generated picture of skirt, and then yes, no, as far as an image poll is what it was called. And I could do that. I could certainly make these kinds of posts. Am I big enough to justify doing that? Is it worth my time to justify doing those kinds of things? Like that's all very reasonable questions to ask. I don't think I'm going to engage with it too much. I could see certainly asking some big questions and try and kind of just having those kinds of community posts and those kinds of surveys. Like, getting feedback's not a bad idea, although frankly feedback can be pretty useless. So much so, like I asked somebody random on a YouTube post from somebody that like somebody commented on a post that where they said, honestly, if you just put more effort into your titles and thumbnails, you get a lot more people to watch your videos. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's the one thing I totally fail at. I have no artistic ability, and I can't make thumbnails. Like, I just cannot do it. I am functionally disabled as far as being artistically creative to make thumbnails. The ideas may come to my head, but the ability to create them, you would look like MS Paint images. So I said, well, what do you suggest on the titles? And now my titles are very literal. They're just like, this is this show, this is the episode of this show for pre-recorded footage. And this random person who doesn't even have 1,000 subscribers. Like, in all fairness, he had about 800 subscribers, where I have about 400, so he knows twice as much as me, which is to say he knows 2 times 0 as far as being a successful YouTuber. Said, well, less is more, you should just not put the game's title in the title of the videos, so people have to click on your videos to see what you're playing. And I'm like, okay, thanks for the useless, dumb advice. Yeah. You're really search engine optimizing there to say, let's just label each of my 10,000 videos as Rydo Plays number 4,551, and didn't have people jump into that. I mean, just completely ridiculous. Maybe some of that is actually true if you have millions of subscribers. Game Grumps, let's see if I can. Game Grumps might be an example of a channel that can get away with something like that. Let's see. I'm gonna go to Game Grumps' website and see what their video titles look like. Yeah, Game Grumps' latest videos, did we pick the right one? Question mark. Jacksepticeye teaches us how not to suck was the one before that. Yeah, it's not until like five videos down is the name of a title, Bloodborne, even mentioned. And then after that, Mario Party is mentioned another 5 episodes down. So yeah, for Game Grumps, with their 5.37 million subscribers, they can get away with playing no-name games that would have no recognition anyways, and then putting clickbait light titles. Like, they are a little bit clickbaity, but they're not so clickbaity that they're dishonest. But for a new subscriber, or new content, no, I shouldn't say the phrase new, for a small content creator, nobody's going to be searching Jacksepticeye teaches us not to suck, unless they already knew that video existed. I could think of a name of a series, certainly. Like, if everything I did started with, like, the phrase critical review, then the name of the game, that might be a little bit more. But the algorithm allegedly punishes for title stuffing as much as it punishes for just clickbait titles, which is probably to say it doesn't do much of either. And all of that's supposed to be in the tags. I may be stupidly following instructions from YouTube themselves when their own algorithm doesn't follow their own rules. As far as the thumbnails, yeah, as soon as something like stabilized diffusion and artificial intelligence generation of artificial intelligence generations of thumbnails becomes a thing that is somewhat reasonable, I would consider doing that. But at the current moment, if I was to try and use stabilized diffusion to generate things, I'd be spending an extra 20 minutes to an hour generating a thumbnail where I could have been just making an hour more of content. And so it's just not smart. Some of the job listings I've seen, as far as even big YouTubers, want to pay between $60 and $300 per project to have someone be a thumbnail artist for them. And sure, if you're guaranteed to make $60 to $300 at least in ad revenue on a video or on a project, that works and that makes sense. If you're not guaranteed that, then you're going to be absolutely screwed. But yeah, I do have ambitions to try and improve. I just often don't have ideas. And I do think there probably is room to make the titles a little bit better, but I don't know if by much, really. The truth of the matter is it kind of doesn't matter what you do, and getting tangled up in the obsession of titles and thumbnails and clickbaits just so you get a little bit more views takes you away from trying to make quality content. And inherently, I think that is a problem. I'm not going to say my content is particularly quality. I like what I do, and I know I'm not really compromising much in the content I make, but there's a lot of YouTubers out there, certainly, that are just trying to be Angry Joe, just trying to be the angry video game nerd, just trying to be Game Grumps, and doing it way worse than those early successes, which had enough success to get better, and enough feedback, and enough just general support, whether financial or fandom wise, to improve. Anyways, I think that's enough rambling for today. Let's start trying to go through the actual video game news. My new macro does seem to be working still, so 2 weeks in a row, thank goodness for that. And so we will now go through some smaller level of games that don't actually have release dates. We won't be looking at those anymore. Oh, one last nerd thing I guess is worth mentioning, that OpenZFS, which ZFS is a multi-disc file system, and the Open is one of the organizations. OpenZFS is one of the organizations trying to establish standards there. They are looking to make faster scrubs. Scrubs are basically cleaning the discs. It's like it's a digital equivalent of scrubbing a pot and pan, getting rid of garbage and making sure all the data is correct and accurate. It's more about the data being correct and accurate than it is getting rid of garbage data, because ZFS really doesn't care about garbage data. It's not designed to be it's not designed to be highly secure to the level of military grade data wiping. You could try that, certainly on OpenZFS. It would just take a ridiculous amount of time, and it's just not worth it to do things like that. It's easier just to put the hard drive in a hard drive shredder and shred it to wipe data. They're looking to improve compression. They're looking to focus on user space ZFS, which they're calling UZFS. User space ZFS means that they want a better way to implement it without it having to be a kernel level module in Linux, which means it'll be more sandboxed, more safe, more secure, but very possibly slower in user space. But then they also are targeting better performance. So if they can get the performance to be more than satisfactory in user space, then that would work. That would work nicely. Like, ideally you want to move as much as is possible into user space, but a mounting of hard drives is not unreasonable to be in kernel space as far as Linux is going. I don't know if there's really a great equivalent on Windows for user space and kernel space. The concepts exist there, but it is fairly nebulous as far as just how many device drivers have been allowed to be in kernel space, and I wouldn't be surprised if pretty much I wouldn't be surprised if pretty much everything in Windows is kernel space or can access the kernel a lot more than Linux does. Linux is more open source and probably a lot more secure because it's open source. We have Rio Cash on the chat saying, "Can I get a duel, bro? Let's go crazy." No, I already turned down the previous person, JJ to Nico, for the same reason that I'll say in a shorter breath. There's just no reason right now, particularly right now, to play people. You don't get rewarded for it in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. I am happy to see people are excited on the idea, but yeah, until we get daily missions that say you can do this by playing people or some kind of reward, at a certain point, I suppose, if I did just have a ridiculous amount of time and energy, I would potentially stream like a Twitch streamer for 12 hours and play everybody that asks, but that is just not who I am. I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, and I don't want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel for 12 hours, even 3 days a week, where honestly, if I was trying to be like a Twitch streamer, you would have to stream for 8 to 12 hours every day, making it a very, very low-paying, high-hour job. Since we have two people here, I can suggest, hey, JJ Danico wants to play people in Master Duel, Rio Cash wants to play people in Master Duel. There you go. You've got 2 people. Put your friend codes in the chat. Play each other. Cyan, the makers of Mist, put out this tweet 424,320, and in a picture of what looks like a rock but could be a satellite image. I do know that there was this new planet that was the most Earth-like planet yet that we found, and so that may be what this number is. It's the planetary designation of that planet. I only pay a little attention to the astronomical nerdom stuff, but yeah, I do know that this planet was about 3 times as big as Earth, and then the planet the planet was around like a dwarf star. So I would assume that's what Cyan is talking about. Otherwise, Cyan is teasing potentially a new project. Although Cyan tried to be a publisher there, and I know Area Man Lives, I don't think is out yet. And I don't know if that really is just a game that they're publishing. But the first thing they tried to publish really did not work. So I really don't see Cyan as the type of company that really should be a game publisher. I don't think they have any real experience or knowledge there. I think they really should just focus on making their niche AA type games. I wouldn't really call the Mist series a AAA game series. Like that. Being a publisher, I assume they thought they would make a lot of money that way, and then realized that the games have to actually be good, and publishing is not as easy as I'll publish your game for you and then I'll make a ton of money off of it. Let's see, we have a GameDeveloper.com article here that I wanted to make sure we covered. Carrying on the vision of Benoit Sokol in Siberia the World Before. The game director Lucas Lagranvati discusses the task of carrying on the Siberia franchise without the creator Benoit. Now, I assume if you're naming the guy and he's not involved, it's because he is dead or something like that. It really wouldn't just be a case that he just decided to not be involved. And the Siberia series, I think, is probably old enough. By the way, Rio Cash put in his friend code on the chat, so if JJ the Nico wants to friend him, that's available to him. He did mention something as far as he wants to play streamers to get good deals. No offense, I've never had an experience of the many times no, it's not that many. Of the dozen times or so between Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, the vast majority of people that want to play me as a streamer do not make interesting content as much as people, and I imagine the people that are playing me think it's interesting, but it really isn't. Their decks are not really any different than what my decks are, or their decks are great and they beat me because I'm not really paying that attention. In all fairness, I don't make interesting content on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel because I really don't know the cards. I really don't have that good of decks. But they just don't do anything that special. Only in Hearthstone, when people could like share their decks, when they introduced that function, when somebody could say, hey, I've got this great idea of a deck, why don't you share it and see me play it, does it start to make sense. But the vast majority of people just think they have a decent deck and they just want to show it off, and then immediately I will either be completely overwhelmed by their deck, or more often I would just wreck their deck and that would be that. Like, I've been playing card games a fairly long amount of time, decades and decades. Magic the Gathering Ice Age was probably the first collectible card game, or earliest collectible card game that I played, and so like I kind of know the general strategies regardless of the game well enough that if you are a younger person and this is your first card game, yeah, I don't want to go into a full rant on that, but yeah, I just don't think it works. And I'd love to hear examples of somebody who has at least 1 million subscribers as a streamer, since I don't watch Twitch. Is there a Twitch streamer out there that plays collectible card games and plays random people, and that makes good content? Like, if there's somebody doing it, I'd like to see how they're doing it. I'd like to learn that process, because I just don't know how to make that work. But back to this article. Let's see. Sokol returned to the series when it was released in 2017, Siberia's 23, and was deeply involved with the design of this year's Siberia the World before his passing in 2021. So he did die. That's really the whole point of this article, and me wanting to read this article, is that they just wanted to remind you, hey, this guy died, the creator of this series died, and they're trying to carry on his legacy, which is a fair message to send. The Siberia series is kind of this long-running point-and-click adventure that is set in kind of like an alternate world, I think. It does, some Siberia games look fairly different from each other too, but yeah, it's a series I keep meaning to get to and don't get really close enough. YouTube Creators is pointing out this creator music idea where you can use music that's copyrighted and still monetize your videos. It is a deceptive rebranding of what effectively already existed on YouTube, because there was always a percentage of songs that you could have going in the background of your YouTube videos that the creator would choose to say, I'll just share revenue with it. So then they would take, I assume, 50% of any ad revenue you got on that channel. I wouldn't be surprised if it never was even 50%. I wouldn't be surprised if the percentage changes per song they used it. But what they're doing is they're basically doing some trickery here, saying, we now are offering you a list where you will share ad revenue based on your usage of the song, which may be something you would engage with if you're making say, a short TikTok like video, and that's really where they're coming from, that's going to play a minute of a 2-minute song in the background with you dancing in front of it. And if you were doing that, then fine, fair enough. 50% or more probably goes to the music creator doing all the audio there. It's not fair as a video game creator, though, and not wise as a video game content creator, for me to go and try and pick out a song and have it play for its full 3 minutes in an hour-long video, and then 50% of that hour-long video ad revenue goes to the music creator. So, yeah. And it is a slight improvement in that you now have a full list of music that will allow you to use it without fear of getting a content ID strike or copyright strike. But the chances of you getting a copyright strike are still somewhat high. Like, I could see just one song creator in that program changing their minds or changing the license, and then all of a sudden a bunch of strikes happening. Or the ownership rights or streaming rights changing hands, and then everybody getting screwed because of that. Like, that danger of a false copyright strike in particular still totally exists, and very little would get around that. So yeah, they're promoting that as a major new feature when it's not much of anything. The Quarry, by the way, had these 50s throwback character outfits that are free for until November 1st. I tried to click on this before, and it just gave me the same encounter the product error. So I think you have to actually own the Quarry to add it to your account. Like, I don't think you can add the game DLC without owning the main game, which means you're effectively screwed if you wanted to get it for free but didn't want to buy the game, and that's the whole point, isn't it? That kind of gimmick heavily implies that the Quarry as a game knows it's going to lose a significant amount of value after Halloween as a horror game, and that it is going to almost certainly reduce its price in some level fairly quickly outside of its launch window. There is a real problem around the vast majority of highly polished visual horror anthology type games that are coming out and have come out. There's just a very long list now of those types of games that I'd like to play, but I really don't have a major reason to play because they all are kind of mixing together. If anything, this is the new Twilight Zone, is to have things like the Dark Pictures anthology, or games that aren't part of the Dark Pictures anthology like the Quarry, all come out and compete. And this is very much follow the leader in that there was one very successful horror game with kind of like a branching path butterfly effect experience that came out a couple of years ago, and now people are just copying that idea. But I couldn't even tell you the name of that successful game because it all just blurs together. Speaking of anthology horror, I did watch the first couple of episodes of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, which is an anthology horror series. Although, in a lot of ways, he's a bad presenter, even though he only shows up for the first minute. He's trying to be like Rod Sterling, but he's a big fat guy that doesn't speak English very clearly. So I mean, he's a well-known director, and so I it's nice that he's involved, but they really needed a presenter otherwise, because he is just too bad of a speaker and too fat of a person to be in front of a camera. As nasty as that may sound, it really is just the truth. As far as the actual shows, they seem to be really just random horror stories combined together. They have what looks like decent practical effects and visual effects, but they don't really have a moral like the Twilight Zone. It's just like, here's some bad guys, and then they here's some bad guys, and then something bad happens to these bad guys, and it's just horrific. Noticeably, there is also some lack of care for detail, or perhaps something weirder going on, in that, like, the second story has this guy set in what would be like the 1800s or 1700s times, definitely not the 1900s or 2000s, and yet he pulls out this gun that is just like a brand new gun. Like, it's like a 22 gun or something. It's totally not the flintlock type thing. It's a handgun. It's not a repeater. It's not a revolver. It's hundreds and hundreds of years out of place, and he shows it multiple times, and it's just like they didn't care about getting the proper right, apparently, unless there's some big twist that says all these stories are happening in some kind of weird alternate world. But each story has its own director. So Guillermo del Toro, I'm butchering his name, I think, is not even really involved so much. If he isn't really being involved, he's kind of being more like a Jim Henson and Jim Henson Productions, presenting shows that other directors made using maybe Guillermo del Toro's connections with practical effects and horror effects. But yeah, there really is no rhyme or reason to it at all. There's no morals that I could take from it. It's just like, hey, we needed something for Halloween, so let's put something together. And it's actually fairly late for Halloween too. Probably will stupidly sit through all of it, though, in all fairness. Let's see if we can send something back. Send that to the graveyard, I guess. Add that to the hand, I guess. Alright, so now I think I can activate this effect. Summon this. Summon this. Put that face up. Summon this. Sacrificing those two. Put that there. Activate this effect. Negate effect? Sure, why not? Special summon that in attack position. See if we can banish 2 more cards. No great luck there, but maybe we'll have enough here. Yep, and see, already an hour in, and I'm already exhausted by this. Like, this deck, with its limitations, is not as interesting as this same deck when it is unlimited. Let's come over here and make sure we couldn't have flipped that. Alright, so going through the articles from Video Games Chronicles fairly quickly. November's free games, quote unquote free, although now they're using single quotes instead of double quotes, which is a slight change with Amazon Prime, have leaked Fallout New Vegas and World Rally Championships among 7 titles. Here's the full list. We pretty much had already talked about that. We already talked about the Quarry getting its 1950s DLC for free. Microsoft wants to own a Genshin Impact-like game for Xbox. The gacha game has generated over $4 billion in revenue in 2 years. Wow. That is certainly a lot of money. Like, you can't really deny that. Oh, there really is not enough room, is there? Let's do this, and that. I could have summoned a 4. Oh wait, I can summon a 4. I got lucky. To say the least, I got lucky. Yeah, that definitely is a lot of money, certainly, and Genshin Impact is the most successful and most worthy of success game I've seen on mobile games so far, ignoring the lewd waifu game I love to play, Destiny Child. I don't know if Xbox really has an audience that would tolerate the gacha-like mentality. So if gacha is part of the idea there, I don't know if that really is going to work. Let's see. Let's just end the turn because I'm running out of time. Yeah, I think it would be dangerous, to say the least, if Microsoft started to advertise a game that every week, every day is trying to push the preteens and teenagers that would have just gotten an Xbox into playing that. Although at a certain point that's just Fortnite and V-Bucks too. So as much pushback as people have gotten from Fortnite and V-Bucks, that is probably the exact same amount of pushback that Microsoft would get with the gacha element. Otherwise, all Microsoft is kind of saying is that they want something that looks and feels a lot like Breath of the Wild, because that's all Genshin Impact really is it is taking visuals that feel a lot like Breath of the Wild and making that work for them in a different game. And at a certain level, wanting a Breath of the Wild type adventure Zelda-like game makes a lot of sense. Darksiders 1 was basically that, and even at that, Darksiders 2 and 3 go in different directions and gets too far away from that. There's just not enough Darksiders games for that to have been the competition. And that is a lot of kind of worthless legacy packs. But there wasn't really any other competition, and the Darksiders series has its own narrative and visuals that makes it not quite feel the same way that what would have been Ocarina at the time, Ocarina of Time, felt like. On a different level, this may very well be more of a case that Microsoft, in their podcast, Phil Spencer in his podcast, that Microsoft is just trying to appeal to the Chinese market, according to a new report from Reuters, which is, maybe you should take that with a huge grain of salt, and this could just be Reuters promoting the Chinese markets. It would be very funny if Microsoft came out and said, no, we are not actually looking to acquire Japanese or Asian market specific or Asian market focused games, particularly Chinese markets, because let's face it, the reason why the reason why the Chinese market is the way it is right now is because the Chinese government does not want any of its citizens, which it sees mostly as just slave labor that they begrudgingly pay, doing anything other than working and or being educated to work. Like, they don't want kids playing video games. It is a convenient boogeyman to use politically. Video games or any form of entertainment. It's a distraction from starting at the iPhone factories at the age of 14. It's a channel in which ideas and concepts that are not as strictly under control of Chinese communist propaganda where ideas may spread. And so, after seeing failure after failure after failure of companies, particularly video game companies, but also movie companies, music companies, even Lego and toy companies, all trying to make inruns into the market, the Chinese market, because there's allegedly 4 billion plus Chinese citizens out there that could become consumers. But all of those companies have failed miserably. It just doesn't work. You can't do business in China with their current economic policies. I honestly also wouldn't be surprised if we find out that the number of people that actually have money to spend, extra money to spend on things in China, is considerably lower than people think. I wouldn't be surprised if the number of people in China is actually considerably lower than what they claim. But yeah, I'd say take it with a large grain of salt. Microsoft has deep pockets, so they could certainly waste a lot of money buying something. If they bought, say, that new game from Shift Up, the makers of Destiny Child, Project Nikkei, for instance, okay, I could see them buying that, but that's not even a particularly Chinese focused game. Even Genshin Impact really isn't a Chinese focused impact game, so this really isn't a great example of Redders just trying to get some search engine optimization going on one of their articles. Like, Genshin Impact is definitely targeted to the West. It looks Asian, certainly. It's got that anime visuals style to it, certainly, but it's not really a Asian gacha game, just in the sense that it's actually too generous. Most Asian gacha games are incredibly greedy with their drop rates. Alright, so the penny drops. Moving on, our next Video Games Chronicles article. Dark Souls Prepare to Die Edition PC servers won't be brought back online. Online services for Dark Souls Remastered will return in an indeterminate time. There's no reason for you to have any faith that even Dark Souls Remastered will ever have the servers turned back on. When they found the bugs where hacking could occur in the Dark Souls games and Elden Ring, they focused solely on just getting Elden Ring's servers patched, and they used it obviously as a greedy excuse to shut down, and I think they're never bringing back any of the servers for any of them. You might as well assume that to be true until you're proven wrong on that aspect, because it just doesn't benefit them at all to bring back servers that would cannibalize forcing people to play Elden Ring. And the Elden Ring players are almost 100% the same players that would be wanting to play the previous Dark Souls games. Now, personally, this puts me in a kind of weird position where I probably wasn't going to play any of the Dark Souls games anyways, and if I was going to play with them, the online component, which was very minimal and honestly not, I don't think, a good idea in the first place. I could see myself, if I did want to go back and try and play the Dark Souls, Demon Souls games, just playing them with the servers down anyways, so it doesn't really change my position. I'm still not likely to ever play those games, but I feel like the people who were likely to play those games probably did want that element. And it's another reminder of just how the online concepts of games are not guaranteed unless you can have direct connections. If any kind of cloud server thing is going to eventually very likely get shut down and abandoned. And so that's why I don't play personally online games. I don't have any interest in them. But this also should be thrown directly in the face of the publishers, developers, mostly the publishers, which I think is Square Enix for the Dark Souls series. But I could be wrong. Like, it does certainly show that they're not interested in treating the customer right, and they're not interested in servicing anything. You see this with like Internet of Things, home automation stuff too. It's just like a lot of services where they could be shut down. The cloud services could be shut down. That's why, home assistance software should exist and needs to get a lot better, because in the next 10 years a lot of home automation stuff is just going to get shut down and not supported. And that's where something like Matter as a standard is working towards making things always run locally and not have cloud services and not have things get shut down and abandoned. But also just cheap Chinese products. 1 second, I have to answer his phone call. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I thought that was going to be an emergency, and really, it was really more of just an inconvenience that I could have easily put off. But just like that, once again, you're one step further away from getting that blue card protector because I just walked away. And I can't even really blame the time limit on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel for that one because I was just not going to play at that instance. Inherently, the solution is that they should reward you for the number of games you played in these kinds of events, not how high you get up in ranking. That maybe there should be a title reward for getting up in ranks, but then there should just be a progress reward. And the other events do that, whereas this type of event doesn't do that. But they do it in a very pathetic way for Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, in that you get like 50, maybe 100 experience towards getting a reward if you lose, where you get 500 to 1,000 experience if you win. Moving on, Video Games Chronicles news. The Last of Us Abby actor says she would definitely play the role again. I didn't even pause the video when I was recording, so now it's just going to be this gap of dead air in the middle. Apologies for that. Laura Bailey says she would be keen on return despite the drama around the character. What is the real drama, quote unquote, around the character? I mean, the drama around the character was originally The Last of Us had a character, had Ellie look like a actress that was not the face actor or voice actor, and was actually an actress, face actor for a different game. So that they basically just were making someone who making a 3D visualization of someone who looked like they had just traced a real life celebrity's face on. That was one drama, certainly. And then there's just been, after that change of the face, then there was another change of the face in the remaster. But I don't remember much of other dramas. As a character, Last of Us 2, Last of Us Part 2 makes us kind of hate Ellie as a character, but overall I think people loved Ellie and The Last of Us as far as Last of Us 1. So, It says Bailey also received abusive and threatening messages as a result of betrayal of Abby, some of which she shared online. The reception forced Naughty Dog to release a statement condemning harassment of the cast and its developments, their safety. Like, I don't know what the complaint was, really, as far as this actress getting hate mail. See, the problem I think mostly that happens here is that actors of this generation just don't have enough thick skin. They're all little snowflakes, for lack of a better term, and that is a loaded term, but I think actors, voice actors, are best described as that, and they have these huge egos. I look at Kanye West at the moment and just his flipping out and going crazy and having his ego bruised. It seems like that's why he's flipping out and going crazy. Like, and so I just think actors are overreacting to insignificantly small numbers of comments posted online, not even posted directly to that person, whereas in previous generations when the internet didn't exist, people would have been sending hate letters and hate mail directly to companies or actors, and that would just always go in the crank file. There seems not to be a crank file anymore in the minds of a lot of people. We have Neos RKH saying, "Sup, new here? Are you in rank or room duel?" I'm doing the regulation link battle right now. And desperately trying to just get to Platinum 5. And as soon as I get to Platinum 5, I am quitting doing the regulation battle and just going back to playing ranked. But yeah. I would say that there is a danger when an actor says they loved being in a role. Like, anytime anybody says they love their job, they are either not doing their job particularly well, or their job is particularly easy. Take one or the other, because acting should be a little hard. It should require a lot of mental and physical exertion to put out the performance that you want. If somebody says they would definitely go back and do the role again, then that tends to imply that it was an easy paycheck and an easy job. The Last of Us TV show is set, I think, mostly in the pre-times before the events of the first game. So it really didn't ever seem like it was going to cover anything that would be Last of Us 1 or Last of Us 2. So, yeah. Her presentation, or this actress's presentation of Abby, really has no connection to the video games. It's just additional context. It is on the same level in my mind as if they had written a Last of Us comic book and had some other events happen in that comic book, or in a different animation style in the comic book. Speaking of different animation styles, Multiverses will get Black Adam and a new arcade mode this week. Black Adam here, not really looking like The Rock in the Black Adam movie, which the Black Adam movie, from what I generally heard, was pretty awful. But it did lead to, I think Henry Cavill was the most recent Superman actor, saying that he's going to come back and play Superman. That being said, there still doesn't seem like there's enough money that maybe Warner Brothers just does not have enough money to do a DC cinematic universe like Marvel did, and so they keep just bouncing back and forth between let's try this, let's try that, let's try this, let's try that, and it's not cohesive to a level that you would expect nowadays because of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Arguably, Warner Brothers should just hand the reins over to the same people that did the Marvel movies and say, just do the same thing for us. We'll give you half the profits, Disney. Just every other year, release a DC movie, then a Marvel movie, then a DC movie, then a Marvel movie. Just pad out your things. That would probably help the Marvel Cinematic Universe too, because there definitely have been some stinkers as far as Marvel movies. And if they could have said, hey, let's make a Batman movie instead of let's make a what would be a bad movie for them to potentially have made. Yeah, I don't even know which one would be a good example there, because Doctor Strange in the Mind of Madness might be your best bet there, to say, hey, instead of making a Doctor Strange movie, which will just be a weird niche movie that less people will be interested in watching, let's make a Batman movie instead. It is fairly late for Multiversus also to add an arcade mode. You would have thought that that would have been their day one. They are up to 22 characters, although I still question whether the characters could ever be high enough for Multiversus to really feel like a competitor to Smash Brothers. Next article we have from Video Games Chronicles says Apple will take 30% of all in-app NFT sales according to new App Store guidance, which really isn't any difference, I think, than Apple's rules and regulations anyways, is that anything sold in-app, Apple wants its 30% cut, which I think there's definitely an argument that that's not fair, but we're also talking about NFTs, so I don't think too many people are even going to care one way or the other, because nobody's going to engage with NFTs. Apple also did say that they are going to follow the USB-C European Union regulations, but they made sure to make sure everybody knows they're not happy about it. The iPhones will start to be USB-C connectors, and I don't believe they're going to be allowed to just put adapters in the European versions of the boxes. They're going to have USB-C as a connector in their phone. I wouldn't be surprised if they try some kind of thing where they try to change how their USB-C connectors work, so maybe a lightning port or some other connector also works with it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they tried any of that, if that got smacked down also. Like, at a certain level, if they were able to squeeze a few more wires into a USB-C connector and it were backward compatible to a regular USB-C connection, I don't think the European Union cares about that. All they care about is that every plug that powers a phone is the same, and people stop throwing away plugs, and people stop making junk adapters that get lost and thrown away. Let's see. The only other thing here I think worth mentioning as far as the subheadline, and I'm not willing to go any deeper into the article, is that users can view the NFTs on Apple's platform, so they're trying to make more of a platform that would potentially justify 30% cut, as long as they don't unlock functionality in the game, which seems weird because it would almost seem like they should require that you'd be able to view it in the platform and it unlocks functionality in the game, if it does unlock functionality in the game. That all NFTs sold on the Apple platform have to be on the Apple platform. And maybe that's what they mean, and they've misunderstood what their meaning was. Because it certainly would make a lot more sense to say all NFTs should be viewable in their platform. And I'm not 100% sure if they mean Apple is creating a new platform, or if they just mean that in the Apple Store, if you own an NFT, the NFT is viewable, or in iCloud or some other Apple service, it's viewable. I'm not sure which platform they mean, iOS or the Apple Store or iCloud or iPhoto or what. I wouldn't be surprised if they come out with something called iNFT. Let's see. November's PlayStation Plus Essential games have leaked. Let's see if we can see a full list. Neo 2, Lego Harry Potter Collection for the PS4, Neo 2 for PS5, PS4, and Heavenly Bodies for PS5 and PS4. What is Heavenly Bodies? I recall the name, but I don't know what the game actually is about. Amazon has offered a first look at its Fallout TV show. First official screenshot released from Amazon Prime Video Productions. It is not this screenshot, I do not believe. Though, so I don't know why they chose that image there. Like, the picture itself is not here, because this is not the picture I saw. The picture I saw was people standing in the vault door of a vault with vault suits on, vault tech suits on, and the number 33. I don't think there's been any lore per se around Vault 33, but it more than likely is going to just be a vault that had nothing too weird about it, and that it actually was just doing the job it claimed it was going to do, which is keeping people alive during a nuclear war and then releasing them 100 years later, or whenever the nuclear fallout was down. I can't help but think, at first thought, that you could have creators, directors that just want to get away from the Fallout stuff fairly quickly and just want to tell a narrative story with characters and relationships. I wouldn't be surprised if the Fallout series is every now and then you see a rad roach run in the background, or you see a super mutant here and there, but day to day, episode to episode, you really just have a human in a bar talking to another human in a bar. Maybe the bartender's a ghoul, something like that, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 80-90% of humans with very little costume design, very little makeup. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't feel much like a Fallout game. And at a certain level, I don't even know what a Fallout game really feels like, because it is an RPG game. You do have the generic stories that happen, the main stories and the side stories of a Fallout game, but many of those stories you also can pick different sides. Some people blow up Megaton City in Fallout 3, and then that would be a totally different type of story. Some people play as the bad guys and play as slavers in Fallout 3. That's a totally different story. So there isn't a consistent narrative compared to, say, the Witcher series, where we all kind of know who the Witcher is, what kind of character he is, and where he's going to end up and where he's going. Which, noticeably, I'm bearing the lead in that they have announced a remastered version of Witcher 1, which makes a lot of sense and does make a great excuse to not really focus on a Witcher 4 game, which would probably get stuck in development hell, as much as just saying, hey, let's just play Witcher 1 remastered, and then hopefully a Witcher 2 remastered will come out soon after that, and then maybe even a Witcher 3 remastered, and then work your way up to 4. Yeah, this is so weird that that's the picture. Let me try something here. We'll turn off the ad blocker. Yeah. So, yeah, this was the picture that they showed. You can just see the massive, massive amounts of ads that Video Games Chronicles has without the blocking. Let's see. So, yeah, it's so just like blurred out from the brightness that if you told me this was just an animated TV show, I'd believe you. This guy seems to have some kind of scarf or neck brace or something, which is weird. And you can just see a 33, and you can see just people, white guys. It does look like it is a fairly advanced vault as far as the technology, and a very clean vault. I wouldn't be surprised if this actually isn't a member of Vault 33 and this is just them opening their doors to a raider. But yeah, you really cannot take anything from all this bright light lens flare stuff. Yeah. Apparently it's also Fallout's 25th birthday anniversary. It's worth mentioning though that Amazon Prime Video's content has been mostly garbage and very infrequent. Unlike Netflix, which has made a lot of garbage, but they've made good stuff too because they've just made a lot. Amazon Prime Video is not trying for that at all. They have the Rings of Power series everybody hates. Then they have the Grand Tour Top Gear characters who everybody kind of likes, or at least a lot of people still like, but those episodes are infrequent. Then they have the Boys series, which everybody likes that as far as people that actually like the Boys series. There is certainly people who wouldn't like that series because it's just too gross, too negative. But outside of that, then you've got not a lot of content as far as Amazon Prime worth mentioning. Like the Ricky Ricardo's movie, the Reacher series. That's probably about all I can even name. On top of that, Amazon Prime Video has gotten just incredibly worse as a series because they've moved a significant amount of things that were free with Prime Video into the IMDb channel that they renamed Freevee. So now it's ad supported to watch any old stuff, or a significant amount of the old stuff on Freevee, even if you're watching it through Amazon Prime Video with the Prime and Amazon Prime subscription, which inherently highlights that the Prime subscription is not as valuable as it once was. So yeah, I don't see a way in which the Fallout series would be that much of a breakout hit. And even if it was a breakout hit, I don't know if the Amazon Prime Video Productions has enough funding to then continue that series going, or make more content, better content. Amazon Prime also has like Solos. I thought that was good, and the Wheel Time series, which I don't think people thought was good. Anyways, I'm talking about videos. I should be talking about video games. Age of Mythology is officially getting the definitive edition treatment. Microsoft's World Edge is remastering the classic strategy game. Now, I guess the question is Age of Mythology a Age of Empires game? And I guess it is, because it was part of the Age of Empires 25th anniversary stream. So the only thing I assume that would be different as far as Age of Mythology is that there would be just more like gods and magic, whereas Ages of Empires are more realistic military battle simulations or world city management civilization sims. And the trailer is definitely just a teaser. Doesn't have a lot going for it. Alright. Did not expect that to go that way. Let's go and toss this so we can destroy this. He's negating a lot of my effects, but I don't think it matters. Let's see. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Microsoft's gaming division reports a record quarter one with hardware revenue up 13%. I wonder how much of that actually though is Japanese hardware sales, because we've seen some major improvements in sales recently for the Xbox in Japan. Although this is quarter one, so unless their quarter one isn't January, then this information is actually fairly old. Content and services, however, declined by 3%, despite a growth in Xbox Game Pass subscriptions, which I guess means that they are losing sales of first-party Microsoft titles in quarter one, or any other services like microtransactions and DLCs for yeah, I would assume that's under that category too. Seriously? I only have 2 of these in the field? Let's see, moving on. Sony is building a new dev team to work on Visual Arts and Naughty Dog, with Visual Arts, which I guess is the name of a company, and Naughty Dog on the AAA title. The unannounced game has a clear vision and plan to release, which is probably a great way to say nothing about a new game. Sony obviously needs to work on more AAA games and first-party titles, otherwise Sony is going to be in real trouble when the well, they're going to be in real trouble even if the Microsoft Activision Blizzard doesn't happen. There's just fewer and fewer third-party game developers that are going to make AAA games that are going to promote the sale specifically of the PlayStation 5. And Sony doesn't have anything else to really fall back on as far as Sony Interactive Entertainment. So if they can't get more games, they can't sell the hardware, and they don't have any other tricks up their sleeves as far as I can tell. A game called Wulong Fallen Dynasty gets a confirmed release date. Team Ninja's upcoming action game will be coming in early 2023. March 3rd, 2023 to be specific. I don't know why they do that other than to just make you scroll down a little bit more to get the date. Let's try and burn through this very quickly. Capcom continues to march towards 10 years of consecutive growth. Company shares Q2 results and confirmed sales milestones for Resident Evil and Monster Hunter. if you've got 10 years of consecutive growth, then more than likely you are cheating using the generally accepted accounting procedures more than your average company. There should have been uh, there should have been one bad quarter, or at least if not one bad year. But whatever. You can't inherently disprove the way they fudge the numbers, and it's not like Capcom really has done absolutely nothing with their properties. The Resident Evil series and other Capcom products over 10 years have succeeded fairly well. I think Capcom also owns the Monster Hunter series, so if there was any time when there wasn't a Resident Evil game bolstering sales, there was a Monster Hunter series bolstering sales in Japan. Two more wins. Am I gonna get two more wins? Probably not. I really want to stop here. At this point, we've done the Link summon to get that gold, so we've done all the special duels Link regulation. We've done all the dailies, and now I have 4 days to do solo mode. We've made probably some small amount of progress, but not a significant amount of progress on our overall lifetime. So, yeah. I don't even know how to cover this. Like, so often we get these surveys, these researchers, these studies that are just so not scientific, that, or at least the interpretation of them is not scientific, that it just doesn't really benefit from anything. It says people who strongly identify as gamers, and I will give some ground there. It's like, I do personally identify myself as a gamer, but I wouldn't say strongly. Like, I don't go up to strangers and say, hello, I'm a gamer. Honestly, if anything, I would probably describe myself more as a programmer first than a gamer, because generally I expect most people play video games. Almost everybody plays a video game. It's just some people are playing Solitaire and Free Cell and Minesweeper on their computers, and some people are playing AAA military first-person shooters, and there's just this wide gap in between of all kinds of different games. People play games on their phones all the time. The true psychopath is if you looked at somebody's phone and it had no game on it at all. But this study suggests, and we maybe could get some numbers here to see how accurate the study is that people who strongly identify as gamers are more prone to racism and sexism. Of course, how do you even define being prone to racism and sexism? New research examines the effect of identity fusion or extremism in gaming cultures. A lot of people are sheep. I certainly will admit that. Like, whatever group of people you're in, there is. If I was to write a similar headline that says people who strongly identify as Christian are more prone to homophobia and or more prone to homophobia and are anti-abortion, that same statement could be made. It's a research paper by Take This. I've never heard of Take This, a mental health advocacy organization with a focus on the game industry. So inherently, this study was designed to get Take This more press. This is an organization that's probably a charity that's probably spending all of its charitable donations and funding to promote itself and do no real good. Even though it says it's a mental health advocacy organization, it's not actually treating mental health problems. Which honestly, I've never heard of an organization that says, hey, we're a mental health group and we're trying to treat people who have been misled towards their way of thinking because of playing video games. This is basically just toxicity as a boogeyman once again rearing its head. And I don't play online, so I just don't see the toxicity. When people come on my chat, I don't see that toxicity at all. Like, not a word one. Like, I told 3 different people here, or no, 2 different people on the chat that I would not play them, and not a single person on the chat bothered to say anything negative or react violently or hateful to that. And that is not a fluke. I've probably told hundreds of people that I can't play them, won't play them, and I've never gotten real pushback. In fact, I've never gotten real pushback in my chat at all. There's been some comments that are spammy, certainly, and backseat driving happens fairly frequently, where people try and control the stream and think they can do it better, or that they just want to kind of backseat drive every decision, or tell me exactly how to play a card in a card game with a 30-second delay, which doesn't work. Well, the problem here is this is the kind of thing where they obviously, just by on the people who funded this, what were they calling it, study, they wanted this kind of outcome. They wanted this kind of they wanted this kind of headline. They wanted this kind of coverage, and so at a certain level, they did not enter it with clean hands. This isn't a real study where you could have peer review and it really matter. It's not science as much as it is just sociology, I guess would be the word. So you go survey 100 different people, you get a completely different response. You survey another 100 people, you get a totally different response. You can pull a lot of tricks to eliminate people from your study until you have the people that you want. I think one of the arguments, certainly around toxicity, is that people do not understand the concept of trash talk or baiting on either sides. I don't know if there is a clear trash talk or baiting definition in which people agree on. Some people think it's part of the game in the same way that trash talk and baiting happens on basketball courts and football fields and potentially even happening just between like yeah, there was an example I was going to use and I've now forgotten it. I think just trash talk happens, and maybe it shouldn't happen. Maybe we should live in a world where everybody says nice things always, but a lot of people know in games, in football fields and basketball, that that's just part of it, and it's not that people really mean it stuff by that. A lot of times, a lot of people are just trash talking because they've seen and heard other people trash talk, or they just expect it. at a certain point, yes, it would be nice if we lived in a world where everybody always said nice things, but that's not the real world. That's never been the real world. Trash talk exists outside of games all the time. There's all kinds of trash talk in any kind of form of competition. And if anything, I think gamers have probably gamified the idea of trash talking to a point where the phrases that are said are memes way more than they are actually intended to hurt people's feelings. Trash talk definitely happens between comedians, stand-up comedians, and that was the example. And it's like, yeah, that's just kind of part of the way things go. Like, very rarely do you have stand-up comedians beating up each other, although it has happened, or fighting each other, or being actually mad at each other, particularly when on stage trash talking each other. That part of the experience of a comedian on a podcast or something talking to each other, so you expect them to be not really serious and trash talking each other when they're on a shock jock radio station and they're making fun of each other and trash talking. That's part of their job as the job has been defined. And it is possible, certainly too, that in professional football and basketball and even in professional sports, they may have rules against trash talking. And they may be cracking down on it to try and make it more of a family-friendly, sellable product. But yeah, ideally, we're never going to be in a world where people don't talk trash. If anything, they're just going to be talking trash in a different way. People have been talking trash about each other for thousands of years. We have historical record of. So yeah, I reject that. I mean, I hate to say I reject your reality and replace it with another, but I reject that as being a valid study and a valid source when it is funded by an organization that only succeeds and thrives on promoting the idea of toxicity, which is inherently all we ever hear from. Whereas there was a study this week on Reddit that came out with way less fanfare and is not getting reported by Video Games Chronicles, which, as a company that also thrives around the idea of video games succeeding, really shouldn't be pushing the idea of toxicity without doing considerable pushback and proper reporting. But there was an article on Reddit just a couple days ago that said kids who play video games at a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours a week, I think it was, maybe it was 2 or 3 hours a day, was shown to do better in studies, in school scores, and things like that. And at the very least, the comparison of that study, or a theoretical study like that versus the toxicity study, is that the school test scores are a metric. They are a number that cannot be denied and is an apples to apples comparison, where proclivity to racism, sexism, whatever ism you're trying to highlight at this point, that's potentially very much subjective. There isn't a number that a scientist can put on that. And yeah, that story should be the story that's being highlighted, and yet it didn't get reported on. And we'll see if Video Games Chronicles does report on it, or if the ESA reports on it, which is a lobbyist group in the other way to put out good news around video games, or the Gamatsu or GameDeveloper.com push it. Although I suspect GameDeveloper.com still also is pushing the idea of toxicity. I don't know why these writers and why these sites even want to exist if they are constantly attacking their fans with flimsy evidence. Like, if they were going to put out an article and it was well defined and it was believable, then that's one thing. But they were always just on this flimsy presence. And there definitely are parents out there who want to hear the toxicity message, and that's why they put out these articles, is that there are parents out there that don't like that they're spending money on their kids in the subconscious level or conscious level, spending any money on their kids, let alone for video games that they don't understand and don't play, and don't benefit from. And they want to latch on to the ideas of video games are the boogeyman, video games are evil, so, or other things are evil, other things are bad. Moving on, we already talked about this, but CD Projekt Red is remaking The Witcher in the Unreal Engine 5. The project, helmed by an outside studio, was announced earlier this month under a code name. Is it really announced if it's announced under a code name? What was the code name anyways? Because that now comes under a different issue. The outside studio that's making it is Food Theory. I've never heard of them. And veteran Witcher series staff are going to be involved. So it's worth mentioning, certainly, that Witcher 1 and Witcher 2 were not made by CD Projekt Red anyways. So now you have the third company having stewardship over Witcher 1 and Witcher 2. Witcher 1 and Witcher 2 are fairly different games also. Much more sex, much more of the Witcher Geralt being a jerk. So unless they are going to try and polish some of those edges off and make Geralt less of a jerk and potentially the game less focused on sleeping with everybody you can find and more focused on the romance aspects of mostly I think he's supposed to fall in love with the one main witch character, not the other main witch character. So yeah, this really is promising nothing as far as a remake. It could be a just kind of remaster of the game called a remake, or it could be a true remake in which every aspect is now going to be rethought and the entire story is going to be rethought, and it may be so different from what The Witcher 1 is, which I don't know if too many people would even complain about The Witcher 1 being drastically changed. I never even played The Witcher 1. I came in on Witcher 2. Yeah, it could be a fairly different experience, fairly different game. Second bite at the apple, as it were. And then at a certain level, while the Witcher series in Witcher 3 was a pretty good experience, there is a danger, I think, of it getting into the weeds and becoming too much like a Skyrim game or just a standard RPG game where you are just wandering around doing side quests and wasting a bunch of time. I don't really think people want the Witcher series to be an open world game where you can create any character and do anything and be any kind of character. The Witcher series definitely now feels like you want to play as Geralt, going through a story and taking the actions you expect Geralt to take. So that limits the RPG elements you can really add to the game and streamlines the game to being a lot more linear. Moving on, Hideo Kojima claims his new game is like a new medium. Medium lowercase here, I assume he is not referencing the game that barely sold called The Medium. The director says he's always wanted to make this game for years, which I think he said the exact same thing as far as Death Stranding. Part of the problem, certainly, with Hideo Kojima is that all of his ideas are crazy, and they kind of work, but they kind of don't. Like they work for his niche audience. They don't work for a general audience so much. And then some of his gimmicks are just straight up gimmicks, like the Monster Energy cans being in Death Stranding, or Conan O'Brien being in Death Stranding. That makes a lot less sense. If you're saying your game is like a new medium, then you're either talking nonsense, or he is going to try to do some kind of weird metaverse, NFT, augmented reality type gimmick with this next game, and I suspect it is going to be some kind of augmented reality type gimmick. We saw him next to Jim Ryan, the president of Sony Interactive Entertainment, just a couple days ago, so there's a decent chance that this new game is also going to come out on PlayStation first. Moving on, Rocksteady's co-founders, Sefton Hill and Jamie Walker, are leaving the studio. The pair founded the studio in 2004. The fact that both are leaving at the same time, unless these two are kind of, I guess, more than just business partners, doesn't make the most sense that would be random. Now, I suppose one thing to mention here is that WB Games, the president of WB Games, David Haddad, posted the announcement, which basically means that they have been asked to leave and were given the chance to write a pre-approved message saying they are leaving, but they weren't even allowed to post it directly on their no, they didn't even write this. When you read this, it says, with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League nearly finished, they have both decided to leave Rocksteady at the end of 2022 and will begin a new adventure in gaming, the letter reads. That's a third person sentence. That's the president saying this, not them themselves saying it. And then when you read this, we have the utmost respect and gratitude for Jamie and Sefton, and wish them all the best in their new endeavor. And like many fans, we look forward to the way they do things. You could almost look forward to what they do next was the rest of that sentence. You could almost excuse this as being a case where Warner Brothers is just taking the chopping block to everybody in this new merger, and they're just firing people left and right. But these are big name people to fire, and I don't think Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was a bad game by any means, or I don't think it is a bad game by any means. We'll see. So yeah, seems like these guys got fired, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go and do something else. A problem here in my mind is I don't really know what Rocksteady has done. I'd have to really look up a list of Rocksteady games. The next move in the game space will be, quote, together. So they are really stuck at the hip. I wouldn't be surprised if they form a new company. I doubt they're going to ever work on a Warner Brothers DC property again, but that doesn't really mean anything. They may make better games by not being stuck or forced to use DC properties or Warner Brothers properties. November's PlayStation Plus Essential Games have been confirmed. We already talked about that, so we don't have to talk about that again. BioWare provides Dragon Age Dread Wolf update. It's playable beginning to end. The team is now working on characters and narrative cohesion, which I'm not sure I even remembered that Dragon Age Dread Wolf even existed as a game. Let's see. Marvel Midnight Sun Season Pass will add Morbius, Deadpool, and more. I didn't even realize that Midnight Suns had come out. I'm not sure it actually has come out as a game yet. Oops, I cannot reload any of these articles because I've disabled the ad blocker, so that just makes it worse. I was gonna see if this would go away or if they're just getting more and more ads. It does seem like Video Games Chronicles is just getting more and more desperate. At a certain point, if it's just like every week they're adding, hey, let's put some more ads here, let's put some more ads here that are basically the same ads even, that is getting ridiculous. And see, this really, I think, highlights just the amount of garbage that you're wasting on your bandwidth and why your internet bills keep going up and your internet speeds need to keep going up and up, is because websites are just not optimized. At a certain point, there is almost a value, I think, in web hosting servers, perhaps charging people more for hosting content, although they won't do that. There's too much competition on that side. So it is very easy for a website to have every web page take up an extra megabyte of space for free on their side and costing the viewer more bandwidth on their side. Of course, when you talk like YouTube or something, they are hosting massive videos, so that's a different type of cost. But maybe there is an allegory there in that YouTube hosts a massive amount of videos, but a significant number of videos are private or not things anybody wants to watch. There is maybe a parallel to say that a massive number of Video Games Chronicles news articles are not being looked at by anybody, or not anything anybody wants to really read. Moving on, Phil Spencer hints at future Xbox console, game, and subscription price increases. I think at some point we'll have to raise the prices on certain things, is the full quote there, which is fine. Like, yeah. I assume that he means console price increases, but by not using the Oxford comma here, which in my personal style guide I suggest everybody do, you could read this as a future Xbox console and game and / subscription price increases, or you could read this as Xbox console price increases, game price increases, and subscription price increases. That's why you have the Oxford comma, because then that shows that this is a list, and the "and" is just redundant English language being added, and it's not bundling these two as being different part of this. Or if you put like a semicolon here, that would mean something different too. Like logically, if you take a programmer's mind, you would just say put a slash here, give it the space, put a slash here, and then put a slash here, and then it would say Xbox console / game / subscription price increases. But very few people write that way, even though that would work for most people. There might be something grammatically incorrect about that. Must be hitting the bottom of the barrel if I'm talking grammar, though. Xbox Game Pass growth is slowing down on console, claims Phil Spencer. However, the service has grown significantly on PC in the last year, according to Microsoft. There's also a quote here that says, if you read the full quote here, I've seen growth slowing down mainly because at some point you've reached everybody on consoles that wants to subscribe. Which, yeah, that's totally believable. I doubt there's that many people that have an Xbox that aren't subscribed to Game Pass that would consider subscribing to Game Pass. Now we're at our Komatsu articles, and why is that working that way? That's weird. Fallout 4 is coming to the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series in 2023. These are upgraded visual versions. Square Enix announces a couple-raising battle fantasy RPG called Towa Sugai for iOS and Android. So it looks like it's Yuri, lesbian, couple-raising battle fantasy RPG. There is a question certainly to ask there as we look at the blurred out video. Like, couple raising may not really be much more different than some of those daughter raising simulator gameplay mechanics, in that there'll just be two people that you have to raise, and since it's an action RPG, I wouldn't be surprised if you're raising them as much as you're just training them to be better fighters, which you do that in a lot of games. There might be a balancing mechanic where when you do one thing, it raises the stats of one character and lowers the stats of the other, and so you have to just go back and forth there. You can see there is this kind of black and white aspect to it, but yeah, they're really not showing a lot here, and so I would have to suspect that this may be pretty much a gimmick. The fact that they are in different types of clothing implies to me that they might be from different armies that have fled their armies, and now they're fighting together. A record of our life, a memory of our second death is the subtitle here. Yeah, we'll have to see more details on this game before it even has a chance of being anything. Although it being an Android and iOS game, it may very well not be much. This may just be the point where Square Enix realizes you need these kinds of gimmicks, or you need to be desperate to compete on cell phone games, because the cell phone games are all very generic as far as the RPG gameplay mechanics and visuals, and you really can't do amazingly good visuals on a cell phone game, so you need an interesting story or interesting characters. Yeah, and focusing on a couple probably means you can't make a gacha game where you add more characters as primary characters. A free-to-play MMORPG called Eternal Kingdom Battle Peak for the PS5 and PS4 is now available worldwide. I have heard nothing about this game up until this point, so I imagine it is not much of anything, although who knows, it might catch on. Odds are low though. I don't know if anybody really would succeed making an MMORPG these days. World of Warcraft succeeded decades ago, but I think that's pretty much it. A cyberpunk adventure RPG, Neon Blood, for the PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC launches in 2023. No specific date given. I would watch the trailer, but I imagine it's not going to show much, and we'll get more details almost certainly on this game. Alice Gear Aegis CS Concerto of Simulacrax is coming to the West in 2023. What kind of game is this? This was the one that looked really bad with the anime girls in like robotic mech arms and legs. Like every single time this got promoted and advertised, which was quite a lot, it just visually looked awful. And even here, it still visually looks awful. So the amount of push that it's getting is very shocking to me. Maybe it's based on another series that's very popular, or maybe it's just a case that this is being published by like Mages or Colopol or Pyramid, all kind of second tier names. I've heard of Mages, but I couldn't tell you what they've really put out. So that this may just be as good as they can release, and that's why they're pushing it. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet reveals a new Pokemon, Grievard, which check out that article if you're interested. Redfall has an Into the Night trailer if you want to check that out. God of War Ragnarok behind the scenes video, combat and enemies elevated. I think we got a full confirmation, or I got a full confirmation, that God of War Ragnarok is the last of this series. And they are not going to make a Dad of War third game and make it a trilogy. Which at a certain level, maybe that should be the new standard for people, because it's been a real long time since the idea of having a trilogy made sense for the consumer. Even when you go back to like Super Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario Bros. 2, the actual Super Mario Bros. 2, the Lost Levels, as it was released in the West, wasn't really that good. And Doki Doki Panic was the Super Mario Bros. 2 that was released in the West, and it was just a completely different game. So that's not a trilogy that really works. Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3, I don't know if that was particularly the greatest trilogies. Like, I don't think we've ever consistently seen that trilogies were the right way to go. And even in movies, I don't know if they're the right way to go. Maybe we should have always had duologies, I guess is what you'd call them. Just movies, sequels, reboot, next movie. Movie, sequel, reboot, next movie. Or every movie is a reboot, like James Bond, but even the James Bond movies eventually started to kind of connect. But as far as video games, yeah, this may change the way video games get made for the better. Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 2, reboot, don't make Mass Effect 3. Arkham Asylum 1, Arkham Asylum 2, reboot, don't have Arkham Asylum, Arkham Origins, or what? No, it was Arkham. I don't even remember. The really bad Arkham Asylum 3 made by the main creators of the Arkham Asylum series, not to be confused with the side games Arkham Origins and Arkham Knights, I guess now. Let's see. Moving on, Garfield Lasagna Party launches November 10th in Europe and November 15th in North America. Is this a collection of party games? I would assume that's the case. Slice and dice. Yeah. I almost wonder if a Multiversus Mario Party clone would do worse than a Garfield multi-party clone. A Mario Party clone. This might actually work. We may start to see, since Garfield as a cartoon isn't really happening that much and isn't that popular. I don't know if there really is a Garfield cartoon that's coming out these days. And as a comic, Garfield has stopped making new comics as far as I can tell. Looks like the owner guy, what is his name? John? Yeah, John is in the background there. They may still be making Garfield comics, but I wouldn't be surprised if they stopped and they're just rerunning Garfield comics that are old. So yeah, Garfield in video games makes a lot of sense. Also, it's not going to lead to the kind of Garfield mania that once existed, where there's just a flood of Garfield products, and then they specifically stopped licensing Garfield so much so that there would be a flood of Garfield products. Moving on, Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition is coming to the Xbox Series and Xbox One on January 31st, and Age of Empires 4 is coming in 2023. This obviously was all during the Age of Empires 25th anniversary event announcements, which they didn't really do a good job announcing that there was going to be announcements. That's one thing I guess the Japanese companies are way better at than Western companies, is making announcements for announcements for announcements and just making sure people know that there will be a live direct. Noticeably, Microsoft doesn't have anything like a Nintendo Direct or a PlayStation Direct, and it probably wouldn't hurt them to adopt that kind of idea and say, hey, sometimes we are just going to announce some games and have an event and make those announcements in a direct versus waiting until there's a BlizzCon or some E3 or something. Age of Mythology Retold has been announced for PC. The glory of the original game with updated graphics and features and more, which this may very well be a different game than Age of Mythology continuing. There may be two Age of Mythologies, but I would lean to think maybe I just didn't see the retold part, and this is just a remake of the original Age of Mythology game. I don't know if there was even an Age of Mythology 2. It's possible, but it's also very possible there wasn't. Wizardry VA has been officially titled Wizardry Variants Daphne, and Daphne delayed to 2023. It's a smartphone game. So plenty of time to get more news on that, so I'll skip watching that trailer. R-Type Final 3 Evolved has been announced for PlayStation 5. It's an enhanced R-Type Final 2, which, interesting that you're on your third remake in the Final series, and the Final series is probably a second or third remake of R-Type. R-Type is a very popular, or I guess historically relevant, side-scrolling shooter game, but I don't know if it needs that many remakes, or if it even is that popular. R-Type Tactics 1 and 2 Cosmos has been announced for the PS4 and PS5, Switch and PC, noticeably not the Xbox. Although I doubt the R-Type series is going to be enough of a exclusive that it would actually even sell a couple of copies or a couple of PlayStations in Japan. Here we go. This was the thing I was looking forward to. Famitsu's review scores for issue 1769. I was hoping, and am still hoping, that Bayonetta 3 gets a score in the high 30s. 34 and above. I'd like a 39 or 40. In some way, if the game is reviewed particularly well by Famitsu's, which is a Japanese review site, score site, that will highly indicate and once again prove that Famitsu and Japanese people don't care about the English voice actress and her call for boycott and her controversies that she caused and her dishonesty in the way she described the situation. I don't want to get into all of that. If the score is particularly low, that will be very sad, and it will open the door to two paths. Certainly, either it's very low because Bayonetta 3 as a game plays very badly and has a lot of other problems with it, or it's very low because Famitsu for some reason kind of decided to side with the English voice actress and strike it down in review score for things that the game is not really guilty of. Because at a certain point, when you talk about the concept of separating the art from the artist, which is becoming a cliche very quickly, you do have to separate a video game as a piece of art from its entire staff of people that would have been the artist creating it. Whether that's a voice actor or a director or Platinum Games or Nintendo being the publisher, which I think Nintendo's the publisher. So scrolling down. We have Ace Angler Fishing Spirits, which nobody cares about, getting an average score of 33 out of 40. We have Bayonetta 3 getting 37 out of 40, with 3 of their 4 reviewers giving it a 9 and 1 of their reviewers giving it a perfect 10. There's only been about 4 games that have gotten 4 perfect 10s, so 40 out of 40s in the entire history of Famitsu. They are particularly critical. But yeah, that says exactly what I wanted to hear from Famitsu, is that Bayonetta 3 seems to be a great game, and it seems like they don't care one bit about the English voice actress for Bayonetta 1 and 2 causing controversy. I'm not sure they even knew about it. Honestly, if you had just not paid attention to news in the past couple of weeks, you wouldn't even know what I'm talking about at this point. It's just flared up as a thing and then disappeared. So yeah, that's good news for me. Like, I wanted Bayonetta 3 to be good. I hope this leads to potentially more games like Bayonetta. I wouldn't be upset if they didn't make any more Bayonetta games, but made games that play a lot like Bayonetta, and maybe even brought back Bayonetta as a character, but not as a main character. And then there's also Sumiko Goroshi Mina de Rhythm Party for the Switch, getting 30 out of 40, which is particularly low. Alright, so that's a little bit of good news. I hope we will have more reviews come out for Bayonetta 3 to give more details, since Famitsu only really gives scores, or at least I only ever see their scores. They probably in their magazine actually do give full reviews, and that's just copyrighted, and so it doesn't get reported by Gamatsu. Famitsu not connected to Gamatsu at all, I'm fairly certain. But yeah, I'd like to see Western reviewers talk about it. I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of slacktivist SJWs, who often are mainstream video game journalists, decide to not review Bayonetta 3 or give it a worse score, or spend an entire hour-long quick look on Giant Bomb, potentially talking about the controversy and then not really talking about the game. More and more, though, like Giant Bomb, anything Giant Bomb says, I am almost 100% opposite of that. I feel the exact opposite way. They say they like Marvel Snap. I hate Marvel Snap, even though I'm still playing it. So they're becoming more of the anti-advice place for me, where if they like something, I disagree with them. Inherently, though, also, what is Giant Bomb? Like, the people reviewing the games there are just completely different people than what Giant Bomb used to be. It is a site in name that is the same in name alone, and even that really kind of sucks, because the two people that formed Giant Bomb and formed that company and formed that name have, one died and the other has been kicked out / fired from the company, and so they stole basically his company that he helped found, and now it is this shell of an entity that the corporation really shouldn't have a claim to. And that gets down into some economic thought, certainly, as far as if you start a company and form it yourself, should you ever sell off the rights to the name of that company? And they're going to be tempting offers, certainly, but the answer probably is no. You should probably own the name of the company. If they want to take the general concepts and clone it, fine. But when you form a company, you're attaching your name and your reputation to that name of the company, and it should follow you in your career for the rest of your life. Moving on. Veteran Japanese game designers announced an Edo period roguelike game called Shino no Mi for PC, which, okay, that could be something, or it could be nothing. This is probably a great example of, like, this is what a Japanese person thinks a Japanese game should be, and it is definitely not the kind of game that feels like it would be easily translatable to the Western people. Also, very much looks like it's a mobile game. It might be a bit more of an adventure game than a Zelda-like game, but it might also be a bit more of a top-down twin-stick shooter. I can't really hate on this, though, because I always want to see more Japanese culture, Japanese games. For as many games made by Asian countries, that only about a third of them that come to the West at most are in any way culturally connected to the Asian countries. They often are just these generic fantasy worlds. Zelda is a great example of that. There's nothing really Japanese in the original Zelda games. We get a little bit of that in Breath of the Wild, but not even a lot there. So yeah, this does kind of look like it is a lot of top-down twin-stick shooting through what might be considered a dungeon crawler, or might be more of just a yeah, I would suspect it might be a dungeon crawler more than anything, where you're just always in the dungeon and it's always changing the dungeon. Yeah. Moving on, Wulong Fallen Dynasty launches March 3rd in 2023. I think we had already talked about that. The Digital Deluxe Edition includes a Season Pass featuring 3 DLC characters. Just make sure we get that information out. Nico Golf Anime Golf is now available worldwide. The iOS and Android golf game from Colopole. Which, yeah. It looks like a golf game, and it doesn't look terrible. So, is it available for consoles? No. Is it free to play? Maybe, but no. Free download, yes. Maybe with some microtransactions later, or even major transactions later. Does it really matter if you have an anime girl that has a red eye and a green eye when playing a golf game? Probably not. Doesn't matter if you have an anime guy with, or maybe this is a girl with red hair. Probably not. But yeah, one way or the other, the part here that would matter is just how much does this golf game look and feel like a golf game. You can see there's this whole arc up here where you could potentially hit the golf ball into it if you went too high. I might check out this game just because I'm wasting a lot of time playing mobile phone games. We already talked about the Witcher remake, Witcher 1 remake. We don't need to cover it again. Smurfs Kart Superpowers trailer is available. Yeah. It is an interesting question as far as which would succeed more, Smurfs or Garfield games. I think Garfield probably has it, and there's already a couple of Garfield card games, but it may just be a case that we're going to always have also rans where there will be Smurf carts, Garfield carts, all just copying Mario Kart, and that may work fairly well because Nintendo is slow to bring out new games, so in Nintendo's slowness, there is enough time to buy all three games and play all three games. Although if you play Mario Kart first, you'll probably find Smurfs Kart and Garfield Kart considerably worse experiences. Relayer Advanced launch interview from Dragami Game President Yoshimi Yasuda is available if you want to check out that interview here on Gematsu. McPixel 3 launches November 14th for Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. I guess if the McPixel series is a series that people are interested in, probably deserves a follow at that point. Let's see if we can. Yeah, McPixel 1 is on my wish list. Noticeably, McPixel 2 is not listed here. So I'm confused as far as that. Like, where did McPixel 2 go? Or was McPixel 2 made by someone else? Yeah, it says more from McPixel. So unless I blocked McPixel 2 for some reason, almost everything on the more like this game here is on my wish list, and Bricktails in particular should be on my wish list. There is a sale going on right now on Steam, but I don't think it's any kind of sale that really needs that much mention. Alright, well, we'll keep an eye out on McPixel 3. A romance visual novel called Akatsuki Yoreru Koi Akari is coming to PS4, Switch, and on February 22 in Japan. It was first released for PC in December of 2020. Looks like it's a collection of sword fighting or fighting anime girls. Let's see if we can find a link to the version on Steam. Doesn't seem like it is. Seems like you have to buy it somewhere else. No Steam link. Might do some research there and see if it is on Steam later and talk about it on Friday. Rocksteady Studios founders leaving the studio, or will leave the studio. We already talked about that. We have about 4 more Gematsu articles. PlayStation Plus monthly games, we already talked about. A game called Duelist launches November 10th for PC and Switch. New date set following a delay from a previously planned September release. And looking at just this one screenshot, it's real hard to think that there's much of a game here. But we will see, I guess. Dragon Age Dreadwolf completing its alpha development milestone, which at that point, if alpha means alpha, then there should be no more features added to the game, and it should all be polished now in the beta stage towards a release stage, which I guess doesn't really tell you anything as far as how long it will take them to actually have a finished product, because that could be any number. The Neo series shipments and digital sales have topped 7 million, which is a fairly massive amount of sales considering there's only a couple of Neo games out there. Neo 2 Remastered for PlayStation 5 will be offered free at the PlayStation Plus subscribers for the month of November. Yeah, there's Neo and Neo 2. And I guess if there's a Neo 2 Remastered, that may just be a visual upgrade. There may not be a Neo 1 Remastered. Honestly, the Neo series is older than I felt like it was. 2017, 5 years ago, which really just highlights how I've really failed to meet my goal of trying to catch up on video games and play more video games in the past 5 years. If I had more time and more energy, I would have made 20,000 videos instead of 10. I would have done even more. At a certain point, maybe making a new channel and just merging all my videos into extremely long plays might even make sense, but probably not. And then we have Marvel Midnight Suns Season Pass being detailed to include Deadpool, Venom, Morbius, and Storm. What's funny about the Midnight Suns game, though, is I still don't really know what it is. It's tagged as an RPG, strategy RPG, but I have yet to see actual gameplay footage that actually looks like gameplay footage. Alright, so now we're going to quickly burn through the games that came out on Steam, although we're already 3 hours. And I'm going to give this Curse 3 a chance. But I probably need to find out if there is a Cursed 1 or Cursed 2. And you don't inherently have a series tab on your page unless you make it yourself, where I feel like that should be probably automated by Steam. I wouldn't be surprised if Steam could automate a lot of the information that it has on games and automate the development of how their pages look and force the addition of certain information. Alright, so our first adult game for today is Sex Adventures Vampire Express Train. 3D models of characters. So there's a black-haired vampire lady, a blonde-haired, I guess eventually she becomes a vampire lady, visual novel. Your standard, this has got full-on porn in the screenshots. Came out today. It actually came out. It's $3.49. It's English only. It's tagged as a visual novel. I wouldn't be surprised if it is extremely short. It is basically just asset flips, but the asset flips have a lot of love and attention put into them as far as the models of the characters, and even the backgrounds don't look that bad. The thumbnail looks pretty bad though. So that's one in the tick for more realistic art styles. Jump ball here looks like nothing. Assassins. This game also is tagged as having sexual content in it, so the idea of bundling still definitely feels like it's the case. Although I can show this one because it's really not showing anything. You've got probably an asset flip in this 3D model, and then you look at the real game and it's just absolute garbage. This one is not in the adult section. Assassin's Ball period. Is a weird game title. Says it's Japanese and Chinese full audio, which is weird to have both, certainly. But I certainly wouldn't call this the anime art style by any means. It's still very much in the realistic art style, and that's how I'm trying to divide these games. We've now seen two in a realistic art style. The next game is an adult game. Also, there's got to be bundling. You're not going to have 3 adult games after nearly a week of not seeing any adult games in a row. This one is labeled Futa Paradise, which Futa means dick girl, basically. And yet, noticeably, a lot of these realistic 3D CGI girls are just girls. Like, they do not have a bulge in their pants. So, yeah, I'm not seeing a single dick girl in any of the screenshots. Maybe in the trailer video. Otherwise, I assume this is just a low effort visual novel, kinetic visual novel. Alright, there's one dick girl in the trailer. Yeah, the game is $9.99. It is in the adult section. That's now 3 in the realistic art style. Alright, so next, wow, there clearly must be bundling here. Though we have a more anime focused art style, although I would still say there's a lot of CGI animation instead of flat 2D animation. I will cut Last Tour a break and say that this probably is more in the anime style version. The game looks like it's a platformer when you actually play the game. It's $3.99. It says it supports Chinese and Japanese and Russian, so I have no idea. It too has a Futa character, which I suspect this means that a lot of these are being made by the same people, even if they are being released under different company names. Although I can't prove that. It may just be that Last Tour was bundled together with all the other adult games. And we just did have 4 adult games back to back. Next we have a mobile game, more than likely called Fix My Hand Doc, which I don't know. For these kind of low effort Doctor Simulator mobile games, I don't know why you'd specifically just focus on hands and not several other things. For $2.99, that feels a little too expensive for what is probably barely worth 99 cents worth of content. Alright. Next we have another game here called Touch Love, which is tagged with hentai, but I don't know if there actually is any adult content here other than there might be some lewd content. Yeah, Touch Love here seems to be mostly just a dungeon crawler strategy game, is what it's claiming it is, with some lewd content but not nude content, as it were. The actual screenshots are not really showing any gameplay elements. It seems like the next and back buttons, there's maybe just a puzzle you have to solve to get to this point, and they're not showing that. Or maybe the game is literally just click next, click next, click next. It's $1.39. Chinese is below the fold, Russian is below the fold. We may be seeing a prevalence of companies that are actually Russian shill companies trying to make money again with making these kind of garbage money laundering. I think it's money laundering. I suspect it's money laundering type games, because I doubt too many people really are buying these legitimately. Like, there's just better porn for free online than to play a game like Touch Love. At a certain point, maybe you could buy something on Steam and then your significant other / parent wouldn't question it so much, but whereas if you bought a subscription to Pornhub, it would show up on a credit card as Pornhub. Mm. I suppose I'm going to have to be a little generous and say this is the anime style, the flat 2D art style. I really don't consider this the anime style in my head. This definitely looks like a Western animator trying to ape the anime style. Um, so, if anything, on the tick marks, I still would say there's probably 3 realistic art style adult games that came out, and then 2 question marks, and nothing that screams this was actually made by a Japanese person doing an anime art style, or an Asian person doing an anime art style. And some of that may straight up just boil down to me comparing quality against everything else and excluding anything that I personally don't think is quality as not being anime. So that, yeah, very well may be something that should be classified as low quality anime. I'll give this a follow. I doubt there's anything around this game. Very late to the party. This seems to happen quite a lot where you have these kind of horror games coming out days before Halloween, as if somebody is going to go on Halloween to buy a game on Steam and look just for the newest game. I seriously doubt it's going to work that way. If you're going to try and release a game for Halloween, you should release it October 1st and promote it all the way through the month to have a full launch window. Next, we have an adult game here called Miss Kawaii. This is another thing that certainly I could make a poll on my YouTube channel now to say, hey, do you want me to cover the adult games, or is it just a big turnoff for my entire fandom? This game itself looks like it's probably a numbered crossword puzzle, kind of like a Sudoku, but not quite. Kawaii is Japanese for cute, which is not really what they're depicting here. What they are depicting here is absolute nudity, absolute pornography, and they're depicting older characters, not really what you would say are in the moe animation art style or the kawaii animation art style. If anything, I would say a lot of these characters would be closer towards an animated MILF character than anything. Mutters. And again, I really wouldn't call this a anime art style. It says it supports English, Japanese, Korean, and Chinese, but it doesn't look like an art style I would say a Japanese person would use. It's $2.69. The developer is called Kawaii Hentai, so you know these company names are just made up. Really, Valve should verify the names of the developer, that they should have just tax information filled out and a doing business as form, which many countries require, like I think most, like just a real verification of like what is the address of this location. Do they have a PO box? Can we mail something with a security code to this PO box and you return it? Just that kind of stuff to eliminate and put a little bit of a speed bump between anybody paying $100 to claim they're a new company and list a garbage game would be probably beneficial as far as just the quality of games on Steam. Although it's never really been proven that having garbage on Steam really hurts Steam. People don't even really see it, and they don't really complain about it. This Soul Slinger game probably is an infinite runner that I'm not interested in. Yeah, so I'm gonna say no to that. I've also seen quite a lot of adult games today, this Wednesday. It does seem like the rule now, particularly for the adult section content, is that the adult games seem to be released on Wednesdays, where it seemed like it was coming out every 2 weeks on Fridays. But there might be one person who was doing it on Wednesdays for games that were actually in the adult section. I think this is going to be a no. This doesn't look visually polished quite enough for a horror game. And then the Japanese visual novels that were a little bit lewd were being maybe covered by a different person and getting released every other week on Fridays. But I am definitely back to the tinfoil hat theory that has a lot of evidence around it that there is some level of bundling as far as adult content. And very possibly other kinds of content too, like puzzle games may only get approved on Wednesdays, for instance. If I was to say yes to a puzzle game, I would consider this one, but I'm not, and I don't think I need to make a YouTube short around a puzzle game. Death and Damnation is already mixed, which is a shame because it looks kind of good. So I'm going to give it a follow anyways. Sandwalkers I don't think looks interesting enough. Case files The Death of Paulette Williams. Nothing there. Slender Exploitation. Feels like a Slender Man game. Say no to that. This looks like a too simplistic of a game with only 12 different types of fish. See, this is kind of the example of a game that it's free, so if somebody paid $100 to put their game for free on Steam, that almost feels like it should be in its own category. I wonder if Jada Fishing is supposed to be like Jada Pinkett Smith. I don't think so. But yeah, if this was some kid's first effort at programming, this is pretty good for a free game. For something that should be on Steam, it's nowhere good enough though. So it almost feels like there should be a different category or storefront or just highlight reel of people saying, hey, I made this was my first project, I want to show it off, I want to give it off for free, but don't expect it to be an indie type game that's polished, or a AA game or AAA game, or even a single A game. Robot Tree, I'll give this a follow. Here we have Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid Burst Forth Korogon Breath Director's Cut, which I don't think there's any adult content in this. And I don't think is actually a game you'd want to play. That it's based on an anime series that I don't think is even out this season or last season, and it's otherwise just a bullet hell shoot 'em up game, which doesn't make the most sense to me. And it's being published and developed by completely unknown names. I bet more people will play this game, so I should give it a follow, I guess, just to see how people react to it, just because of the anime licensed characters. But I imagine the reactions will very possibly be negative, and that there really won't be that much reception. Relayer Advanced. This supports English, right? Yes, English full audio. That's interesting. And a ton of DLC content. I don't suspect this is the kind of game I want to play, but it is the kind of game I want to follow. If anything, I kind of feel like I am in a good position to actually make quite a bit of games on the follow list, because I'm burning through the follow list fairly quickly. This Gray Blocks game does not have enough visual polish to it for me to say yes to it, though, so I'm going to say no. I'm late, means I can pretty much say no to that. That doesn't look like anything. Then we have Mosaic Nico Waifus. Is this an adult game? $2.34. Let's see. Nudity, sexual content, general mature content. Characters are over 18 years and older. Actual game seems to be a collection of like puzzle games with live 2D characters. It seems like. I will say though, you have some kind of head swaps of these characters, and none of them really stand out and look amazing. Also, this character is just kind of in this like black latex shirt, which doesn't really vibe well, I think, with the idea of cat girls. Even this cat girl, as she's drawn playing a video game, doesn't feel particularly cat-like, and she's drawn pretty stretched out, pretty long arms and legs, and her head is, relatively speaking, smaller to her body than you normally would expect. But yeah, when you're cropping off the top and not showing the ears, and when you just see a tail that's just like a thin tail over here, that doesn't come off as particularly cat girly. So yeah, but I guess that is another one more in the anime style that definitely felt like it was closer to being what I would consider an anime style than anything we've seen so far. So we're almost getting, if I'm extremely generous, we're almost getting to the point where it's a balanced between the realistic style and the flatter 2D anime style of adult games. Which that's what I've expected to see this whole time, is that there would be either a 50-50 balance very consistently, or that there would be more anime style, just because I definitely had the perception that there were more anime style adult games being made. Maybe that's just not never the case. Maybe it's just not the case now. I'll give this a follow. There might be something to it. Like, things change, certainly. And so, maybe, and that's why I'm looking at these games in the first place, is to try and understand a certain level what the marketplace actually looks like. It's like going to a trade show and seeing all the different types of products being sold at that trade show. Say you went to like a trade show for screws or fasteners, you'd probably be shocked on the fact that there's probably hundreds of different types of screws and fasteners that are being sold. This game Asha looks interesting enough. Blackjack at Carrot. Well, this looks just like a blackjack game, and it looks fine as a blackjack game, but honestly, I would expect a lot more from a blackjack game than just fine visually. Let's see. So now we're at our GameDeveloper.com articles. Creative Assembly has been accused of ignoring sexual harassment by a key staffer. Current and former employees at Creative Assembly alleged that an ex-art director was seriously abusive during their time at the company. What did Creative Assembly work on, or what have they been working on? Like, I don't know. So another accusation for the pot. We'll see if there's any more that happens around these accusations. Certainly. I think more and more we will hear these accusations, and more we will find a significant number of them are accurate. Like, jerk bosses certainly have existed, and jerk bosses have gotten away with it for far too long. And maybe we can solve the unemployment crisis in some people's minds, at least by getting rid of jerk bosses and replacing them with good people. Power corrupts always, but some people definitely have abused their positions of power in jobs to do things that were never acceptable and never professional. We already talked about this story. Microsoft wants in on the next Chinese hint. Like, this is from Reuters. I take it with a grain of salt. I think Microsoft would actually make a big mistake if they spent a lot of money acquiring the rights or acquiring a Chinese game developer or a Chinese game publisher, or even the rights to a Chinese game in particular. If they were going to do that, I think they'd be a lot better making a game and trying to make it marketable in China instead of trying to do business with companies in China. Let's see. Undead Labs' Jeff Strain forms a second distributed studio called Crop Circle Games, which is his fourth studio overall. So apparently Jeff Strain just loves to form studios. Noticeably though, I don't recognize. See, he was the founder of Undead Labs and co-founder of ArenaNet and Crop Circles Games from the second subsidiary Prytania Media. I don't recognize any of those names at all. So I don't know if they've actually made any games or if he isn't just opening companies left and right for some weird reason, possibly for funding reasons, or even scam reasons. Let's see. GameDeveloper.com says Capcom sales slide in the second quarter, but it predicts stronger revenue for 2022. It's always so weird when they put out these quarterly reports and it's 4 months, 6 months, a year later. Witcher 3 or Witcher 1 remake we already talked about. And then Rocksteady co-founders leaving the company. Rocksteady may have actually been the people that were previously making the Batman Arkham Asylum games. Yeah. Founded in 2004, Rocksteady came to fame with the Arkham franchise. So those two very possibly got fired, not for even the current game they're working on. They may have been fired for the previous game they worked on. Moving on, Disney Games VP says indie devs offer limitless potential and partnerships. And then they have this picture. I have no idea what this picture is from. This kind of flat, very bad Mickey Mouse characters. This gives us a little bit of insight, not a lot, but that Disney still is very interested in partnerships and licensing out their products. Uh, um, but yeah, Disney themselves aren't really interested in making games. They may actually change their tune and try to have an in-house game company yet again, now that like the pandemic has hurt their ticket sales and they don't seem like they have that many movies coming out as far as Mickey Mouse stuff. But they're right now so focused on Disney Plus. Inherently, yes, Disney Plus could eventually include getting games, so having a bunch of indie games with Mickey Mouse in it and things like that would also make some sense. A game called Virtuous, I think that's Virtuous, continues to expansion with a Montpelier subsidiary called Virtuous Labs. A lot of speed bumps in that headline, words you can misread. Alright. We'll do a fall list cleanup. Let's look and see what these two reviews are. 2 positive reviews. Normally I would say this game is irrelevant, and I really shouldn't give any credibility to the SteamDB ratings when there's only 2 reviews. But I like this art style for what I assume is kind of a point and click adventure. So I'm gonna make an executive decision and put that on the wish list. Winning Love by Daylight, episodes 1 and 2. I'm gonna give more time to think about. It's probably would be a no at this point, but I'll give it more time. The demo, on the other hand, you can see is very popular, and that may be a mistake that I'm making, certainly, in the way I look at games on the fall list, is that I'm not considering that maybe a lot of people are playing the demos of these games and really liking them. This is a great example also of, here's a different kind of art style that is flat, but I wouldn't for a second be described as an anime art style that more people could try, more people could do. Western people could do it, Eastern people could do it. It would work if you're a good animator. The problem is that there's just not that many good animators out there as you would think. And I took that demo off, but I probably should have left it on. Wings of Legend is a VR game, and I'm just going to say no to it. While the idea of being on a dragon in VR is intriguing, I think we are quickly approaching a point where I'm giving up on VR as a concept. Wing Breakers is mostly positive, so I'll put that on the wish list. Just make sure it's out of early access and has single player ability. Windsurfing MMX needs more time. Then Wind and Leaves. Is this a VR game? Yes. Should I give it more time? No, again, I just think no. I think I'm done with VR. I think I've done the mental gymnastics saying no to it. Windlands is another VR game, but it's rated very positively, so I'm going to keep that one. I've done some of the mental gymnastics, I guess, is probably a better way to say that. I'm still not willing just to remove everything, even if it is positively reviewed on VR. But if it's not hugely positively reviewed on VR and it doesn't look that interesting, I'm going to say no to it. This Wind of Life doesn't even have a release date, so I'm going to remove that. Then Wilmot's Warehouse. This organizational game, I think there is definitely some points at which the organizational game like this might interest me. but then there are definitely other points where it feels like you're doing somebody's job. And I haven't used this phrase in a while, but when you're doing somebody's job in a game, it tends to stop being a game and just becomes work. Village. I don't think this is relevant enough to keep on the follow list. Okay. So, with that, I will start the spectate game, and I will go through my Twitter feed. We've gone for 3 hours and 30 minutes now, so I just want to quickly scroll down my Twitter feed, and that'll be it for this stream. This was a rough one, having a break in the middle of just silence, but that's not that rough. What's more rough, I would say, is just the not succeeding to platinum level, playing the event, and then just effectively giving up on that. And I think for the most part I have given up on that. I don't think I am going to bother to come back and try and play that. Oh, I did hear that some of the presenters at G4 were getting paid $20,000-$30,000 for their appearances. And I assume that's $20,000-$30,000 for a one-time appearance, which is quite a lot, certainly, and you can see why G4 would just not be profitable in that kind of scenario if you're spending that kind of money to bring over big celebrities. Like, I can see bringing over PewDiePie and maybe thinking about paying him $20,000-$30,000, but even at that, I would think I would want multiple appearances, more plugging. There's also some stuff that was leaked out around, like, the person that was supposed to be the person in charge of G4 had a really expensive like office set up for them and never even moved into the office at the G4 studios. Let's see. And then there was this feeling, certainly with the person that the person who actually was running the show for G4, the lady, was just being set up as the fall guy. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read and talk at the same time and failing at both. But yeah, there was just a lot of mismanagement of funds, and then telling people at G4 that wanted to, like, say, build a set, that there wasn't funds for it because they were a small indie company when they were owned by Comcast and really weren't a small indie company. If that was the idea, that needed to have been the idea from the beginning, is that, yes, we're going to do this lean and mean. But undoubtedly there was a point at G4 where the impression was given that money was no object, and then the impression changed very quickly to, oh, money is a big object, to, oops, you're not making enough income to fund yourself, so we're going to shut you down. There also, in the leaks, seemed to have been a default thought of they weren't going to bring back any of the other older shows, and they just wanted new content. Now, I know they kind of didn't have the rights to any of the Revision 3 stuff, and I think most of the rights to anything Revision 3 or Tech TV had probably already been sold off, so that only leaves the G4 gaming stuff, but I assume the G4 gaming stuff still they had the rights to it. So it's crazy that they didn't immediately start streaming with trailers and covering trailers quite a bit, and immediately start trying to find cutscenes and do some of the skits things they did before, because there was a lot of like other shows than just X-Play and Attack of the Show that were support shows. They weren't great shows, but they kept people on the channel if you were watching G4 in between the two shows that were harder and more expensive to create in X-Play and Attack of the Show. If anything, a new G4 probably needed 3 or 4 X-Plays and 3 or 4 Attack of the Shows. Another complaint or leak seemed to be that they were definitely pushing towards the idea of celebrities being on every stream at every time, and that's certainly something I felt too. It never felt like you're going to tune in at a specific time or watch a specific video to see Adam Sessler do X-Play. You might see Adam Sessler, but he might be just sitting around hanging out with people, or you might see X-Play, but it may not have Adam Sessler in it. So there was this weird disconnect. Yeah, I'm still scrolling down my Twitter feed. There's not really a lot to say. I just have a lot of things popping up on my Twitter feed. And maybe I've already hit a point, and I'm just looking at things because like some of these, they're all out of order. It probably has done that. Yeah, I bet that's what's happened is I need to click it so it does things in chronological order again. Now that would explain why I keep seeing things that look more like they are procedurally being put in front of me instead of seeing things chronologically in front of me. Well, with that, I'm going to venture a guess and say I've probably seen everything that needs to be seen. Yeah, I'm also going in circles at this point too, because I am like seeing the exact same posts over and over again. So we didn't even have a Duel Live mission there. Yeah, more than likely this will be done and I won't get to this point and get this blue protector, which is not a big loss really, and I wouldn't be surprised if the blue protector is offered again later. But if I do play off screen, maybe I'll make better progress there. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. Thanks to everybody who jumped on the chat. I guess that's all I can say. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.